Now we are going to start with our very first session of today, that is development of a rubric. So I hope I'm clearly audible to all of you this time, and my PowerPoint presentation is also available with all the participants.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir. So when it comes to the development of the rubric, we need to understand that what we mean by assessment and evaluation. And as per the timetable of this particular program, let me show you the timetable also. As per the time schedule of this particular program, on Monday we have covered the aspect of assessment of the student performance, and we come to know that when it comes to the design of different evaluation tool, what are the different tools available with the faculty to design and use for the classroom evaluation purposes. So as far as this particular development of a rubric is concerned, when it comes to the design of a rubric can be used for assessment and evaluation both. So I hope up to now it is clear to all of you that when it comes to an assessment is basically a Latin verb as tire and meaning to sit with. So when we are assessing the performance of the student, it means we are collecting information in terms of student learning. So when I said we are collecting information in terms of student learning, it means to teacher or the faculty need to devise ways by the use of which the teacher come to know that whether my students are able to go through that course content or not. That is why there is a continuous assessment as per the demand of NEP 2020 also, so that we can assess the performance of the student, and based on the performance shown by the student, we can make certain instructional decisions. So when it comes to the assessment, it is not that we are giving marks or grades to the student, but at the same time, we are improving our teaching practices. So that is why we are collecting information. Say, for example, during the first week when we have covered many of the instructional strategies with all of you, I am selecting instructional strategy as per the nature of my content, as per the level of my student. But sometimes X strategy that is selected by the faculty is not well suited in a classroom environment. And after collecting information related to the student performance, teacher comes to the conclusion that rather than using X strategy, if I'm going to adopt a Y technology, Y instructional strategy, that strategy is more adaptable, that strategy is more convenient for my students to go through that information. So assessment is not only related to student performance, but with the help of assessment, it is possible for us as a department to improve the practices that we are following for our designing something for our students. So process of gathering information on student learning help us in many ways. Many aspects of teaching learning can be improved upon if the teacher is able to use good assessment practices at institute level on continuous basis. Now the question arises when it is being said, in the last slide we said process of gathering information on student learning. So the question arises how we are going to collect information. So any member from the group, how we collect information as far as student performance is concerned? Yes, any member from the group? When it comes to the collection of the information, there may be the teacher is going to administer a written test or a viva voce. In a classroom environment, when the teacher is asking questions to the student, we are collecting information in terms of student performance. If the teacher is using think, pair, share, numbered head together, structured problem solving, project based learning, all these teaching methodologies or strategies help us to collect information related to student performance. For the various skill-based activities also, the teacher is going to conduct a test to know about the development of the skill that is happening among student population. So there may be many ways, or the teacher is going to identify different methodologies by the use of which the teacher can collect information related to the student performance. I'm not going into the details of the evaluation because Monday second session, Dr. Paramjit Kaur Tulsi ma'am already covered the aspect of evaluation and assessment with all of you. So in nutshell, when it comes to an evaluation, the teacher is going to make certain judgment and decision based on the information received after evaluation. So assessment is not evaluation. Testing, measurement, and assessment are not same, but we are using these terms interchangeably. So the first thing that we need to understand before the design of a rubric as an evaluation tool, that where we are heading in assessment. So when we said, as per NEP 2020, the aim of assessment is it must be regular, it must be formative, it must be competency based, it must promote learning and development of the student. So when I said assessment, as per NEP 2020, when I said assessment must be regular and formative, it means the teacher need to conduct many activities, design many activities for the student, in which the teacher can regularly monitor the performance of the student, competency based. So the activities that is being designed by the teacher must be target specific activities. Target specific activity means in which not only the cognitive and psychomotor behavior of the student comes into picture, but also the response of the student need to be developed at institute level. So behavioral dimension also to be evaluated with the help of these kind of activities. So when I said competency based, so there is a competition amongst group of student, team of the student, and individual student can also compete with himself only if he or she knows that on what basis my teacher is going to assess me or evaluate me on the later stage. So from one level to another level. So if as a student I want to upgrade my level, I clearly need to know that what are the different dimensions that I need to cover under the grade B if I want to shift my grade from C level to B level. So I am not only competing with the group of the students in my class, but at the same time to show that kind of performance, I'm competing with myself also, but that evaluation or assessment criteria need to be clearly defined at institute level or at departmental level. Assessment must promote learning. So when I'm saying assessment must promote learning, so on continuous basis, when we are giving and designing activities to our students, the objective of the faculty or the learning outcome that is designed by the faculty, that up to the end of this particular lesson or up to the end of this particular unit, my student will be able to do these. So we are promoting learning on a continuous basis and developing the performance of the student. It focus on assessment for learning. So when there is a continuous assessment happening in the department or in a classroom environment, sometimes the assessments are graded, sometimes assessment may be non-graded. Sometimes the teacher is providing written feedback to the student in terms of their performance, or sometimes the teacher is providing the verbal kind of feedback for the student. So the focus is on the for learning. So whatever activity we are designing for our student, the major focus must be that student must be able to do something after the completion of this particular activity, or they are able to get something out of the activity that is being designed for them. Test higher order skills, analysis, critical thinking, conceptual clarity, etc. So when we said the student is able to test the higher orders, we are as a faculty, we are able to test higher order skills of the student. So it is how the teacher is going to design different assessment activities for the student. Say in a classroom environment, if I'm asking question, define something, my student can develop up to the level of remembrance. If I'm asking for a numerical formula and application of that numerical formula, it means the understanding or analysis part is being developed by the faculty in a classroom environment. So when it comes to test of the higher order skills, in what way the teacher is designing and asking questions to the student, and when we are giving activities to the student, whether there are the copy of the text material that is already available with the student, or teacher want the student to do something while sitting with him or her in a classroom environment. So higher order development can be happen if the teacher is going to design activities in such a manner. Say for example, in the next session when Dr. Paramjit Kaur Tulsi ma'am is going to cover setting a reliable and valid question paper, in that particular session also you are going to cover that when it comes to the design of different question item, what can be the standards that we need to follow as a faculty as per the level of the student. So when I'm saying define something and give Two examples from industrial environment. So for that remembrance, again, the student need to think of that for this particular definition, what are the most suitable examples that is available, that might be available with me, and I need to give those examples. So higher order skills can be developed if the teacher is not only spoon feeding information among student population, but allow them to perform certain things, allow them to complete activities and tasks, so that the teacher is having the student is having clarity. Development of critical thinking is there, and the student is able to develop up to the level of analysis. It helps entire education system in revising continuously teaching learning processes to optimize learning. So in the last session of Friday by Dr. S.K. Gupta sir on curriculum design and implementation, I remember sir said that if we want to improve the teaching learning practices, first we need to improve the evaluation system also. So when we are able to evaluate, when we are able to revamp our assessment and evaluation strategies, it will help us to improve our teaching learning processes, and students are able to optimize their learning. So there are few universities in which the choice is given to the student. So from the 8 questions, the student need to complete 5 different questions. So students already know that this much portion of the syllabus I can ignore because the choice is available with me in the examination. From 8, I have to attempt only the 5 question. So if these kind of assessment and evaluation strategies can be revamped in an education system, it is possible for us to increase the teaching effectiveness and engagement of the students in the process of learning. So now come to our the topic of discussion, that is rubric. So what we mean by rubric? Rubric means the red earth for coloring. So before I start my discussion in this particular topic, any faculty who is using rubric at present? Yes, any faculty member who is using rubric sheets at institute level? Any member who would like to reply?
No, ma'am, we are not using it, ma'am.
Okay, you are not using it. Any another member? Okay. No response from your side. So we assume that the faculty members are not using rubric as an assessment tool at institute level. So when it comes to the design of the rubric, we need to first understand that there is a relation between the learning outcome, assessment method, and scoring method or evaluation method. So when we said there is a relationship between learning outcomes, say for example, I have written one learning outcome for my subject, that my students are able to differentiate between the different types of food chains. So that is my learning objective. So when I'm assessing the performance of my student in a classroom environment, maybe I give few of the images to my student and ask them to identify that what type of food chain is this. So I'm matching my assessment strategy with my learning outcome. So when it comes to the scoring method, so in the final MST internal test paper of the student, when I'm asking that give an example or give me a labeled diagram of grazing type of the food chain, it means I started with the definition. I started by defining the learning outcome. In a classroom also, I find out a strategy by the use of which I can understand or I can have analysis that whether my students are able to achieve that learning outcome or not, and that learning outcome directly become the part of my internal test paper. So there is always a relationship between the learning outcome, assessment method, and scoring method. Say for example, if I want my student to perform something in a laboratory environment, so my learning outcome is the development of psychomotor skill related to this area, when I'm assessing the performance of the student, when the students are actually working in a laboratory environment, dealing with that particular equipment or machinery, I as a faculty observe the student and ask few questions related to the working of that machinery and equipment. So my learning outcome mapped with assessment method. And in a final practical session, when I ask my student to perform a practical activity by the use of that particular equipment or machinery, I again going to relate that learning outcome with my scoring method. So there is always a relationship between the learning outcome, assessment method, and scoring method. When it comes to the design of the rubric tool, Rubric is considered as a scoring tool that explicitly represents the performance expectations for an assignment or a piece of work. Say, for example, you have assigned one activity to your student, that is case study analysis. So in a case study analysis, what are your expectations as a faculty? So whatever your expectations are, that expectation you are going to enforce on the student population. So for a case study analysis, say for example, if I'm saying case study analysis and my student performance need to be, students are able to read that case thoroughly, students are able to write few important key points that are given in the case study, students are able to give conclusion for that particular case study, students are able to think of the various applications of that case study in a given situation. So that is my performance expectation from that case study analysis. For another faculty, there may be different kind of performance expectation. So when it comes to the design of the rubric, so we need to divide that activity into number of subpart, and we need to give weightage to those particular activities. Say for example, the student giving a presentation. So performance expectation, when the student is preparing that PowerPoint presentation, information must be collected from authentic and valid resources only. Student must be able to present information in a clear manner by the use of good nonverbal as well as verbal behavior. Students are able to use all kind of infrastructure facilities available in the classroom environment. Student is able to conclude that presentation by answering the questions asked by the audiences of that presentation. So these performance, we divided that presentation activity into 4 different dimensions, and on the basis of those dimensions only we are going to perform we are going to evaluate or assess the performance of the student. So you can think of any activity, say when the students are working in a laboratory environment. So in a laboratory environment, there are 4 different factors that we need to consider while designing an assessment criteria. That is the process evaluation, product evaluation, general behavior of the student, and viva voce. So these are the performance expectation in that particular environment. So likewise, we need to give weightage to these parameters. Another example may be when I'm giving a written assignment to my student. My expectations are students are going to collect information not only from the textbook resources but also from different web references. My student will submit that assignment copy to me on time. When the student is submitting the assignment, the student is following the criteria in terms of writing that is laid down by the department. So I, for a written assignment activity, I may call for the similarity index report also from my student. So for a written assignment, these are the expectation, and these expectations we are going to convey to our student before assigning any activity to them. So rubric is a scoring tool that explicitly represent the performance expectations for an assignment or for a piece of work. Now the question arises, say in a department, there are 13 different faculty members available, and every faculty is giving a written assignment to the student. Then what will be the performance expectation? What will be the standard criteria that need to be followed at departmental level for a student population? Or every time as the faculty changes, the performance expectation changes for that particular activity? Yes, what needs to be the best approach? Is there a need to develop a standard criteria for assessment of the student assignment, or every faculty can design his or her own criteria as per the nature of the subject? Any member from the group can reply. Yes. Is there any member available with me?
Ma'am, can you please repeat the question?
So my question is, as per that, when it comes to we need to we are considering rubric as a scoring tool, and we are saying that these are the, while developing this particular assessment tool, we need to consider that these are the performance expectation for the activity that is assigned to the student. So as a faculty, we all give written assignments to our student. So when I'm saying performance expectation of me as a faculty for a written assignment may be different, but my faculty colleague may have different kind of performance expectation. My third faculty in the department may have different viewpoint or different kind of a performance expectation. So at a departmental level, is it that for every subject, whenever the written assignment is given by the teacher, every teacher is going to design this rubric tool, or the standard tool need to be developed at departmental level, and that tool must be used uniformly by all the faculty of the department? So what will be the better approach?
Yes, ma'am, a rubric should be designed before assessing the students so that from every perspective, the student should be judged similarly in the same manner.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So when we said the performance expectation of every faculty may be different, we as a faculty member of a given department need to sit together. We need to design a standard criteria. But yes, in that standard criteria, as per the level of the student, we can change the scale of that particular grade or expectation. So dimension will remain the same. Written assignment will divided into 5 different parameter. Presentation may be divided into 4 different parameter. Project work may be defined into 8 different parameter. These are the activity specification chart of those tasks that is assigned to the student. But as far as grade of those assignments or those activities are concerned, it is as per the level of the student. So at departmental level, we need to find out few of the activities that are common for all the semester student, and for those activities we need to define particular dimensions on the basis of which every departmental faculty is going to design criteria as per the level of the student available. So standard tools need to be developed at institute level. So the next question arises, when we are using rubric, so it is totally based on the learning outcome that you want to achieve. So it can be used for the skill based activity. It can be used for the actual performance, for the product performance, and for the need of the affective characteristics. So these are the 4 parameters on the basis of which we can say that rubric is directly linked with the learning outcome. Learning outcome is directly linked with the assessment strategy and with the final evaluation process. Another question arises, why we need rubric. I hope as a faculty in a classroom environment, there may be many chances. Say the student is submitting assignments to you, and after getting the assignment, when you give evaluated assignments to them back, 2 or 3 students come to you that this particular assignment and my assignment is similar by nature, or sometimes the text is copied from one booklet to another booklet. So in that particular case, if the text is same in both the copies or in both the assignment sheet, it means the teacher is going to give the same kind of marks to the student. If I'm giving 8 out of 10 to one student, 8 out of 10 to the other student also need to be there. But sometimes it happens that faculty member give 8 mark to one student and 6 marks to the another student. So that is the kind of variation in terms of marks or grades to the student. Sometimes it also happens that when we are giving some activity to a student, one student is spending 6 long hours for the completion of that activity by using different internet resources, websites. Another student is able to complete that activity within the time period of 1.5 are by following the different textbook or the reference material provided by the faculty. It means both the students are working in a different way for the completion of the same activity. So that variation need to be identified by the teacher and need to assess that which student is able to produce more quality kind of work. So it will help the faculty to understand the resulting spectrum of the grade for the classroom assignment. So at the same time, it helps us to revamp our education system in terms of assessment and in terms of a grade. So if there is a variation in the quality of the work received from the student, the teacher is able to understand that there may be students who are excellent, there may be students who are good, there may be students who are average, there may be student who certainly needs improvement. So the quality of the work produced by the student help us to define the scales of any evaluation criteria. So I hope up to now this is clear to all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ankan sir. So another example to understand that why there is a variety of skills that need to be used by the faculty. So we always go na excellent student, best student, average student, the student who needs improvement in terms of performance. It means there are variety of students available with in our classes, and their way of thinking, their way of learning is altogether different. Another example from the field of mechanical engineering is the case study analysis of the broken engine part, and the faculty divided the class into three different groups, group 1, group 2 and group 3. After the case study analysis time period is over, group 1 student come to the faculty and said, yes, the engine is broken, pointed out all the broken parts and they were right and stopped there. Second group of the students said agreed the engine was broken. They went on to say that why it was broken, and maybe even said what effect the broken part had on the rest that was not broken. So as compared to the group 1 student, the group 2 student tried to elaborate the information provided in the case study analysis along with the effect of the broken part on the rest that was not broken. There may be third group of the student who agreed that yes, the engine was broken, how it was broken, pointed out all the broken parts as group 2 student, what effect the broken part had on the rest that was not broken, and then also provide solution for the problem that how to fix it. So we consider that if we divided our class into three different groups, there is one group who is able to achieve the level of excellence. So the group is able to perform a complete analysis as far as the case study analysis activity is concerned. It means the variety of students available, their performance level is vary. So we need variety of tools to be used in a classroom environment. So these are certain advantages of the rubric. The very first one is the grading consistency. So what we mean by grading consistency? Yes, any member from the group, what we mean by grading consistency? So when it comes to the grading consistency means that whatever the performance of the student is or whatever the kind of shown by the student, if the teacher is going to evaluate the performance of the student based on the standard criteria designed at departmental level. So whatever faculty is evaluating or assessing the performance of the student, the faculty members are using that as a standard tool. So it provides grading consistency. Second is it reduces the time spent on grading by reducing uncertainty. So as a faculty, when a standard tool is available with me, it is possible for me to grade my student, and students are very happy when the transparent kind of assessment system is being created at institute level. Faculty can identify those skills or concepts that need more instructional time and student effort. So after assessing the performance of the student, the faculty can easily identify that as per the learning outcome, these are the cognitive abilities or these are the psychomotor skills we need to develop among students. But after evaluating the students with the help of standard rubric tool, the teacher need come to know that on these concept or on these skills we need to give more time or extra time to the student. Rubric can help develop student monitor and assess their performance as they work towards clearly indicated goals. So when it comes to the rubric, the design of the rubric, it is a written kind of the tool available with the department. So I want to show you one rubric sheet. See, this is the rubric sheet for the seminar activity. So this kind of standard criteria need to be designed at institute level. So this is in the rubric is considered as a language game of language. So this particular written criteria is developed by the departmental faculty, and they are going to use this rubric sheet for the assessment of seminar activity. So when this kind of tool is developed at institute level and we upload these tools at institute LMS facility, or by any mean we transfer this information to the student population, our students come to know that in what part of the activity we need to put maximum effort. So whether I need to put maximum effort for the preparation of presentation scale, or I need to collect more authentic information, or I need to integrate variety of media and method in it, or what is the role of class participation as far as my grade for that particular activity is concerned. So that is why it is being said that rubric help the student to evaluate their or monitor and assess their own progress as they work toward clearly indicated goal. So when the teacher is using rubric sheet in a classroom environment, as the teacher is assigning activity to the student, along with that particular instruction, the teacher need to give rubric sheet to the student related to that particular activity. That rubric sheet help the student act as a feedback tool when the student is performing that activity in his or her own personal time. So these are some of the advantages of using rubric as a tool. So when it comes to the design of the format of a rubric tool, this is the standard format we all may follow. In the first, we need to provide a task description. So on the left hand side, there are different dimensions, and then we divide the rubric sheet into number of scales. So as per the level defined, we need to give a description to the various dimensions. So when we say task description, so it is related to the performance of the student. So when I'm saying task description, it is not only that we are labeling or we are giving name to that particular rubric sheet as a seminar or a group discussion or a presentation. When we say task description, the overall behavior come in picture, that what are the different behavioral expectations in a classroom environment, how the student need to participate in that particular activity, and what kind of proper protocol need to be followed by the student for the completion of that particular task. So as a faculty, what are my expectations from that particular activity that need to be conveyed to the student population also. So each student will make 5 minutes of presentation on the changes in research community over the past 30 years. So 5 minute presentation, the time given for the presentation is 5 minutes, and what the student need to perform in that, from the last 30 years the student need to collect information and then give information in a synthesized manner. The student may focus the presentation in any way he or she wishes, but there needs to be a thesis of some sort, not just a chronological exposition. So the teacher want the student to focus on the presentation in what way he or she demanded, but at the same time there must be some conclusive kind of statements given by the student rather than adding information in a chronological order. The presentation will also include appropriate photographs, maps, graphs, and other visual aids specifically for the verbal learner. So task description mean, as a faculty, what are the different performance expectations I am expecting from my student, and those performance expectations need to be labeled under the title, that is task description. So rubric for an oral presentation, it may be the number of different dimensions. First, we need to design, and then as per the level of the students available with us, we need to define the scales of that particular rubric sheet. So the third one is the dimension of the rubric sheet. So when it comes to the scale of the rubric sheet, the teacher can use qualitative as well as quantitative scale. So when we said quantitative, it can be from 100 to 80% as a A grade, 79 to 65% is a B grade, 65 to 40 is the C grade, and less than 40 is an individual who needs improvement. So when we set the scale need to be divided as per the level of the student available. It can be quantitative by nature, it can also be qualitative by nature. So if I'm using a rubric sheet for classroom assessment purposes, and my objective is not to give the final grade or score to the student based on the activity, I can also go by the qualitative kind of scale. It can be examples, may be mastery, partial mastery, progressing, or emerging. Non-judgmental and non-competitive language also need to be used. So another scale that we can use may be high level, middle level, or beginning level. So as far as the scales are concerned, always the positive kind of vocabulary need to be used by the teacher in a teaching learning environment. Another is the dimension. Dimension means we divide the activity into number of subcomponents, and for those components we are going to provide a detailed description. So lay out the part of the task simply and completely should actually represent the type of the component skill student must combine in a successful scholarly work. Breaking up the assignment into a distinct dimension leads to a kind of task analysis with the components of the task clearly identified. So this is how it is possible for us to divide the whole activity into number of dimension. As far as the literature in the field of rubric is concerned, it is written that the optimum size of the dimension need to be 4 to 5. Excuse me. The optimum size of the dimension needs to be 4 to 5. If there are more dimension classified by the teacher, it is difficult for the teacher to evaluate the students on later stages. So all that also need to be think upon by the teacher. So up to now we have defined the dimensions of the rubric sheet, the scale as per the level of the rubric sheet. There can be qualitative scale, there can be quantitative scale. So when it comes to the different dimension related to the oral presentation, it may be knowledge and understanding of the student, thinking, inquiry, communication, use of different visual aids, and presentation skills. So likewise, we need to give weightage to these particular dimensions also. So knowledge 20 points, thinking, inquiry 30 points, communication 50 points, use of visual aid 20 points, and presentation skill 10 points. So ultimately, when we are able to define the dimensions of that rubric sheet, we need to give weightage to the different dimension also. Say if the activity is of 50 marks, how you are going to distribute those 50 marks in 4 different dimensions. So that weightage to the different dimension need to be given by the teacher. The last part of the format of the rubric sheet is the description of the dimension. So a rubric should contain the very least description or the highest level of the performance. So as far as if you are going to develop rubric for the very first time in your life, for your class student, always go by the 3-level scale. And for that particular 3-level scale, when we are when we are defining the description of the different dimension, we need to consider that started from excellent level up to the needs improvement level, all kind of instructions need to be given to the student. So a rubric should contain at least a description or the highest level of the performance in that particular dimension. But my suggestions to all the faculty member that whenever it is a description of the different dimension, for every scale there must be a distinct kind of distinct discussion or explanation that need to be given by the teacher. So description plays an important role. So for example, the case study that we were discussing was a broken engine part. So it is a classroom assessment activity. So we simply divide that classroom assessment activity into two different components. The very first one is the clarity point and another is the application point. So 5 marks given to both the dimensions. Scale divided as good, better, or excellent. So likewise, we need to give the quantitative scale to that particular rubric sheet also. So for a classroom assessment activity, these kind of rubric sheets can work. So this is one example when we are following the format of the rubric sheet and designing the rubric as a criteria. Now, before I proceed further for the different types of the rubric sheet, any faculty, if you have any question?
No, I'm not so far.
Yes, no questions. Yes, any another member, if you have any question? So the last part of this particular session is the different types of the rubric sheets. So majorly we have four different types of rubric sheets available with us. The very first one is the holistic kind of a rubric sheet. So holistic kind of a rubric sheet provide a single score rubric that incorporate all the performance criteria. So when it comes to the holistic kind of a rubric sheet with a special focus on a technical student, these kind of rubric sheet can be used. These type of rubric sheet can be used in a classroom environment where the teacher is in the habit of conducting viva voce. This kind of rubric sheet can also be used when the teacher or the student is in the process of identifying a project problem. In that particular case also, for a problem definition, the teacher can design a rubric sheet. So as far as the holistic kind of a rubric sheet based on the performance of the candidate, there is one numerical value assigned to the scale, or we can say score of that rubric sheet. So holistic kind of rubric sheet can be used for the subjects that are related to the numerical ability of the student. So at departmental level, we need to define that whether we go by step marking or what kind of approach need to be used by us for our students. So that need to be understand. Another example of holistic kind of rubric that is prepared by the faculty from communication skills branch. So when it comes to the design of the holistic rubric, the teacher is defining this rubric with the three different scales only: exceed expectation, meet expectation, and fails to meet expectation. And as per the scale defined, the teacher is going to provide a detailed description that what we need to consider when uh, considered as an exceeding expectation candidate. So this can be think of by the teacher while designing these kind of tools for the student. So the most used rubric sheet nowadays is analytical kind of rubric sheet. So when it comes to an analytical kind of the rubric sheet, it provides a specific feedback along several dimensions and give a separate source of each criteria. Now, in this particular rubric sheet, we have designed on the basis of an analytical sheet only. So there is presentation scale, information collection, utilization of visual aid, and class participation. And for every dimension, there is a specific marks that we need to give to the student. So when it comes to an analytical kind of a rubric sheet, it is very easy for the teacher to design and develop various strategies or various method by the use of which they can actually evaluate that whether my students are able to understand that information fully or not. So in analytical kind of a rubric sheet, each and every description of a dimension is clearly described, and based on that particular description only, many of the institutions are providing services out of that. So when it comes to the in an analytical kind of a rubric sheet, when we saying presentation skill, now read the content on the point present PowerPoint presentation. In excellent level, when I said presentation skill, it hold attention of the entire audiences with the use of direct eye contact, seldom looking at notes, excellent in terms of communication skills. speaks in voice modulation to maintain the audience interest, and emphasize key points and make best utilization of the time. So when we said excellent, these are the different expectations as a faculty we may have from the student presentation. But when we said the poor or the student who needs improvement, so that student display minimal eye contact with the audience while reading mostly from the notes and slides, speaks in uneven volume and little or no inflection. So for every scale, for every activity, we need to give certain weightage, and description to those activity must be very carefully defined. So likewise for information collection also, utilization of visual aid and class participation also, the same criteria follow. Another example of analytical kind of rubric sheet that I have collected from the module number 6 of AICT NINIT policy, that is the rubric for teaching effectiveness. So if head of department wants to measure the teaching effectiveness of XYZ faculty, he or she can periodically fill this rubric sheet, and at the end of the year give conclusion that what are the different areas in which the teacher actually needs to have training, how we can develop our faculty so that they can meet with the large and demands of the students. So when it comes to design a rubric sheet specifically for a teaching effectiveness, it is knowledge in the subject, communication skill, dress code, punctuality, humor, friendliness, assignment preparation, etc. So on the basis of these dimensions, the teacher classified 4 different scale, that is 4, 3, 2, 1. There can also be the addition of the qualitative scale for better understanding, but quantitative scales in analytical rubric can also work. So after defining the different dimensions, we need to give weightage to those particular dimension. So when it comes to the weightage, say in this rubric sheet, sir has given 2 marks to the knowledge in subject, 2 marks to communication, dress code, 1 mark, punctuality, 1, and other parameters likewise. So when it comes to giving weightage to this particular dimension as per the marks or the weightage given and as per the marks received by the student in a scale, the teacher can calculate the total number of teaching effectiveness score. So score for the teaching effectiveness is 40.5 out of 46. So this can also be the purpose of analytical kind of rubric sheet. Now, the last kind type of rubric sheet is a task specific rubric sheet. Say, for example, there are certain activities in a curriculum that have the phased kind of evaluation and assessment. Say, for example, a project work, problem identification, definition of the research methodology part, or the literature review, the student need to conduct beforehand. Once that activity is over, problem identification concept is over. Now the next step of the project is implementation of the project, who will made or develop that project for me. So in all these parameters the students are working. The third kind of evaluation that is happening in a project work is when the students are in the process of giving final submission to the student related to the various concerned. So it means the project work is divided into 3 different stages. So evaluation or assessment of project activity is at 3 different stages. Likewise, we need to prepare separate rubric sheet for each and every activity assigned. And at the end, when we are in the way of giving final remarks or grades to the student, we need to club the score obtained by the student in all these 3 evaluation and give final marks to the student in terms of project activity. The fourth type of rubric sheet that we can use in an institute is the developmental kind of rubric. When the teacher or the management, if the teacher wishes to monitor the development in a student, an individual student or group of the student, or when the faculty wants to monitor the progress of the faculty and other staff members, we need to develop a rubric sheet. So the developmental kind of rubric sheet consider a development of a process, product, or behavior. So developmental kind of a rubric sheet can be used several times to see the changes over a period of time. So that can also be considered. So the rubric 2 on effort to increase teaching effectiveness, this is an example of developmental kind of a rubric where we want our student to develop. We want our faculty to develop gradually so that they can advance student in that manner. So that need to be think upon by the departmental faculty. Next comes to the stages in constructing a rubric. Reflective stage, in how many parts it is possible for me to divide that activity. Listing stage, what are the number of stages or what are the number of dimensions available in a given activity. Grouping and labeling, how we can club different dimensions together to minimize or squeeze their size. And then application part, so what is the result of this particular rubric sheet on the level of performance of the student. So all these things need to be considered while constructing a rubric sheet. So checklist for an effective rubric is, as a teacher, we need to know that whether the rubric is fair and free from biases. So when the teacher is explaining each and every activity or description with the help of rubric sheet, that rubric sheet must be distributed among the faculty members of the department. All faculty members will provide their input, and based on the input received, the input will be embedded in that rubric sheet and final criteria will be displayed for the student. Does the rubric reward or penalize the student based on scale unrelated to the outcome being measured? So when it comes to the development of the rubric sheet, we as a faculty need to consider that what kind of assessment is happening right now. Is it that we are just giving rewards to the student, or we sometimes punishing the student for not performing certain activities? So that also need to be decided at institute level. So all the departmental faculty will sit together, they plan for the design of the rubric sheet, collect feedback from each other, embedded that feedback in the rubric sheet. Finally, the head of department will approve that final rubric sheet, and then that rubric sheet must be distributed among the students of your institute. So this is all about the rubric sheet. So as Albert Einstein said, I never teach the pupils, I only provide the conditions in which they can learn. So when we are in the process of designing evaluation tool, it is not only rubric, but any of the evaluation tool, we need to keep in our mind the curriculum of the student, the level of the student, demand of the student in the word of work. So these three parameters will work simultaneously, and based on that we are going to design different evaluation criteria, not only in an online environment, but also in an offline environment. So this is all from my side. If there is any question, you all are requested to kindly unmute and ask. Yes, any member, if you have any question. I hope the session is clear to all the members. Yes, dear participants, if you have any question, you are requested to kindly unmute and ask. Otherwise, I will move to the last slide of the session. So up to now, we come to know that there are different types of rubric sheets available with us, and there is a standard format that we all are going to use when it comes to the design of the rubric sheet. So for example, in a module number 6, in the given rubric, there are certain dimension and the scale decided as 4, 3, 2, and 1. And we are able to give weightage to the different dimensions. So 2 mark, 2 mark, 1 mark. So as per the choice of the departmental faculty, they divided the whole activity specification or the requirement in terms of their weightage. So based on that particular weightage, we need to finally evaluate the performance of our student or our faculty. So we are talking about the teaching effectiveness. So we need to evaluate the performance of the faculty based on the weightage given. So when it is set knowledge in that particular subject, so scale achieved by the teacher, gained by the teacher, earned by the teacher is 4, and weightage given to this particular dimension is 2. So 4 into 2, 8. For communication skill, the scale value is again 2, means weightage is 2 and scale is 3. So 3 into 2, 6. Dress code 3 into 1, 3. Punctuality 4 into 1, 4. So all these parameters need to be evaluated in such a manner, and at the end we need to give the final result or final conclusion of the rubric sheet. So this is how it is possible for us to evaluate the performance of our student with the help of a rubric sheet. Now, at last, when it comes to the use of the rubric in a classroom environment, some of the faculty members consider that it is a very rigorous activity. Yes, initially the preparation of the rubric is very difficult task for all of us because we have to consider all the dimensions of that particular activity, the level of the scale as per the level of the student and weightage to the different dimension. But once this particular standard tool or criteria is developed at institute level, the teacher, when the students are working together in a group, say maybe they are performing practical activity in a laboratory environment, the teacher can have a rubric sheet handy with him or her. Based on the dimension classified in that rubric sheet, the teacher can simply give remarks as far as student performance is concerned based on the criteria defined. So ultimately, it is very easy for us to have a transparent and objective kind of assessment and evaluation system if we are used to incorporate these kind of tools in our teaching learning processes. So I hope it is clear to all the members. If you have any question, you are requested to kindly unmute and ask.